no, with it, like I said, with it being my first book, it's so interesting getting the feedback and hearing, people are saying about it. And it's, I love it. Like, I love it because it's something that I never really, like, you go into a book, or for me, this type of book with it being so raw and real, just wanting to help. And the different feedback and the different things that people are like, oh my gosh, the journal prompts, like I wasn't a journaler and now I'm journaling, or I was scared to journal and now I've started, or I stopped journaling for a long time, but your book made me start journaling again. So it's been really, really cool to hear that type of feedback. So
Yeah, it's you've given people permission. I love that part about what I do and what podcasts do, what women using their voices it does is it gives other women permission to do those same things. Like it almost takes away the fear behind it because for some reason we know logically, like if someone else has done it, I could do it. But
mhm,
when someone actually is saying it, it's like, you're right. It's like a prompt. It's the
mhm,
journal prompts are prompts, I mean, it is a prompt. It's like giving you that power. It's sharing their power with you. So it almost
mhm,
gives you that extra burst of, yeah, I can do this.
for sure. And
Well,
it's
we're
like, I
going to
mean,
get
that's even,
into what I thought about your book because I got opinions.
oh, I love it. I love this kind of, as we started, I was like, I love to hear what anybody has to say. The good, the bad, the ugly. Fortunately, most of it's been pretty good and
Right.
obviously very honest, I mean, it's funny. I remember when I first started writing and went to the workshops, they're like, okay, I'm going to caution you. If you can't take criticism and you can't understand that somebody isn't going to like your book, then don't write one because it's
Right.
going to happen. So I mean, like I said, fortunately, almost all of it's been very positive. And,
Yeah.
when you're speaking to the right people that need the right help, and, it's again very relatable and very raw. It's not like I'm like, hey, 1, 2, 3 step, do this, and then you're gonna be successful. It's like, hey, you design your own path to that, but here's practical ways you can do it. And this is my
Right.
story and my experiences, and here's how you can apply it to your own life.
And that's actually what I really like about it. And I think because you were so genuine and so raw with your own experiences, you couldn't have gone wrong here. You know what I mean? Because you are sharing yours. And in that way, it did help me. It does. I'm still reading it. It helps me put it in a perspective of how to implement it with my own life. Do you know what I mean? Like, I love examples. I give examples all the time because that's how I kind of process things in like if I compare it to something and that's helpful for me in explaining. Some people that might not be the case. Some people might be able to just read scientific information and they can apply that, but not me. To be applicable into my own life, I have to actually have something that's in comparison. And then I'm like,
Hmm.
"Oh, that's kind of like when I do this in my own life." And that really helps me. And that's what I'm finding in your book is and that's why I said to you when I'm getting to these journal prompts, it's making me think of women that I would like to send that specific journal prompt to because of the coaching I'm doing with them.
Right. And that's super cool. That's even, like I said, a part of the journey of writing and hearing those stories and how it can really help. And that's the whole heart of it. But yeah, and I think I'm honestly the same way. The way it's written, and like I said, I think a lot of not necessarily like all self-help gurus or things like that. It's like do this and do that and do this. And that's just not how life works. Like we all
Right.
live in this same world, and I believe we're all collectively one, but we're all in different bodies. We all experience things on a very different level. And I believe we really do find a lot of confidence in being able to find somebody's experience that we can really relate to, but it is genuine. And I remember even when I was writing this book, I mean, gosh, it's a challenge, right? But especially with stuff like this where you have to really like dig deep and pull out some stuff that you don't even really want to talk about, but to really drive the point home, like I couldn't sugarcoat it. But I realized there were chapters and I would write them. I'm like, this is garbage. And what I realized when they were garbage was because I was trying to sugarcoat the message. I was trying to make it kind of pretty. And then I went back and rewrote it and the raw, real, like, all right, this is the real meaning. This is the point I want to drive home. I'm like, okay, that's the chapter that needs to be in the book. So it's interesting how when you really are authentic with your message or your story and your experiences, how much it can really help and relate to other people.
That is so cool that you just said that because we had our rally call last night. Once a week, we meet as a whole community and come together on a Zoom call. They have their own squad calls that they do, but once a week we meet as a whole community. And one of the gals in here said, she's one of my leaders actually, and she said, we were talking about visions, our visions and the goal setting and whatever. And she says, it used to be filled with so much fluff. Where she looked back on some of these things and she's like, it used to be filled with so much fluff. And I took that to meaning, and I think that's what she meant was women have been conditioned to, like men, if you ask men what they want, it is blunt. It is to the point. It is, I will make this much a year. I will go on this many vacations. I will have this many kids. I mean, it is blunt. They have no shame about asking for exactly what they want. But women can't do that. Whether they can even identify what they want, then they have the problem of being able to ask for what they want. They feel like shame around it or not, like they don't deserve it, maybe. And obviously I'm speaking in generalities here, folks, but still. So when she was saying my vision had all of this fluff in it, and I'm like, yes, because you weren't allowing yourself to be like, ask the hard things and say, these are the hard asks. This is what I want. You were like, well, I want this. That'd be great, but maybe that'll affect this person. So maybe I won't like do it to that way, but maybe that's the fluff. When really it's like, no, I will not accept less than this. Yeah. And that comes across as what we've been conditioned to believe is bitchy or a hag or a Karen or you know what I mean? So that's what we see as that versus no, that's confidence, that's pride, that's self-love.
Yeah. And I'm so familiar, I like how you called it kind of like the fluff, the in-between. And what I've realized, and it's so true, as women, we are totally conditioned to essentially put others before ourselves and think of every other case scenario than just saying what we want. And fluff to me creates confusion. It takes us off the path that we truly want to go towards because we're considering every other thing. We're putting fear in front of what our real true potential is. And that fluff is that mind fog. And until you can remove the fluff, there is no clarity. And I found myself kind of encapsulated in that multiple times. Like, not only do I write books, I'm an entrepreneur, and I've found a way to kind of get myself out of that fluff mind zone, essentially, where, okay, if this is what I want, this is what it's going to require me to do. This is going to require me to be around these people. It's going to require me to learn this. And I just know that, it is tough though, to like almost recondition your mind. And especially kind of like, as you said, we as women just naturally do that. And it's unfortunate. It truly is. But that's like, when I'm talking about that message or I talk to other women and I can tell when they're in the fluff because I can tell they're confused. They're saying they want this, but then they're almost like dumbing themselves down. And I don't mean that in like a derogatory way at all. It's just they're holding themselves back, because they're like,
because they're trying not to offend somebody
or they're uncomfortable with trying something, right? Yeah. So that makes so much sense. But
I am going to come right back to that because I have something that goes along with that. But can we please introduce you to my list?
Yes. We just started rolling and going.
Hey, well, you were just starting talking about something so good. I'm like, I'm just going to hit record, keep talking.
I love it.
We're just going with it. Kayla, and I was even going to ask you before, is it Logue? Is that how you say your last name?
Yes,
Logue.
it is.
Okay, perfect.
Kayla Logue. Butcher it.
I love it. I love it. I'm so excited to have you here. You are already so fun. And I'm going to tell you, I'm sorry because I love it when authors, well, actually, I shouldn't say I love it. The ones that I love, I love. When you narrate your own Audible book, I feel kind of bad for you because it's almost like when people stalk stories on Instagram and they feel like they know that person, they become their best friend, even though if you walked up to them in the street, they'd be like, you're a stranger. I don't know you, but they know everything about you. And so it feels like I'm like, I like her. We're already connected because you seem so relatable and real through your narration, through telling your story. That's what you're doing. You are legit telling your own story. And I'm like, yeah, we're besties. It's going to be a great episode.
I love
you're
that.
Like,
no,
you're a stranger. I've never seen you before in my life.
No, I love that though, and that's honestly like that if people that are close to me that know me, they know like I'll walk into any environment and make a friend instantly. Like I will talk to anybody, anywhere, anytime. I I'm totally that person. So like I love that. Even the other day it
Right.
was funny. I was in Verizon, like getting my phone fixed, and this girl came up to me. She's like, "Didn't you just write a book?" I was like, "No, dude,
You're
she
like, I
was."
did.
Yeah, I was like, "I did." So no, I love it. Like, absolutely love that.
Kendra Hall just posted that moment too. She had that moment. They were in Paris and she said this woman was like, I know you. And she looks so much like Reese Witherspoon. I mean, do you know Kendra Hall? She's the Stories That Stick. And she's got a couple books, but that's the one I can think off the top of my head. But anyway, she looks just like Reese Witherspoon. She's adorable. She's from Minnesota, but they live in New York. And anyway, so she's like, yeah, I get that a lot. I look like Reese Witherspoon, Legally Blonde. And she's like, that's not it. And then she was like, oh, you wrote the book about stories, telling your stories. And she's like, I did. And she
I
just
love
posted
it.
about that too, that she got that. So good for you. You got that. That's amazing. That's a big step. So, author of Always Squeezing Lemons. And I want to read your little subtitle you have on that because it is a big part of why I really, really, really wanted this conversation. Taking responsibility to define your own success. That has been a big bee in my bonnet for the last couple months. Like if anybody listens to I have my Friday episodes, which are just me going off on whatever tangent.
Love it.
And it has been really focused on radical action, taking radical action, like extreme ownership and radical action. Like you are the driver here. Otherwise, what are you?
Right.
Like the passenger, but
It's
that doesn't even seem as bad as what it actually is. If you're not driving your own life, the other side of that is it's kind of sad.
it's
So I've
very
kind of
true.
had it in me to be fired up about that. So I really, really love that. What was the big inspiration for writing this book?
You know, it's interesting because like that subtitle probably didn't like that one definition of how to define my entire book into one sentence really didn't come till like halfway through writing the book. And really the inspiration behind writing it was the fact that I had overcome something that a lot of people would see as a massive setback to not really turn into a comeback. And talking about the healing and the hurt and the heartbreak, and honestly, kind of an ass backwards way. Because for me, I experienced a lot of things even after my divorce. So, like, really, in like a short summary for people that haven't read the book, the beginning of the book kind of starts with me living what I would have called a picture perfect life. So I was in DC. I was married to a very handsome man. We had a life that looked amazing. We had a bunch of friends. We had a dog. We had two houses, and I was miserable. And it just, I was constantly conforming, living my life, serving others and doing everything that I thought I should be doing rather than really asking myself, like, what do I want to be doing? And when I started to get a little more intentional with that, rather than just pushing the numbness aside, I really started to confront those questions. I was like, I want to be doing everything besides what I'm doing. So really, COVID hit. We all have our crazy COVID stories, but it wasn't because of COVID that this happened. It just happened to all align. But my husband and I at the time split, and he took the money. I left with $900. I had no job, and I was like, I'll just figure it out. And went home. My parents, of course, were absolutely amazing and supportive. But I told them, like, I want your love and support, but I don't want your help. And I kind of bounced around. And so the book is a lot about the stories and experiences of that massive setback to finding a comeback. And it's the story of building myself and, a career and finding my strengths and having great financial success. But overcoming that to realize that everything after that moment, I chose myself and to live authentically to what that looked like. And a lot of the times we are fueled by hurt. We have to heal and we can't let fear hinder us because I do truly believe our greatest potential is on the other side of fear. So, those are kind of like those stories. And my one sentence is, I think, besides the taking radical responsibility, that really summarizes my experiences, my stories from that all the way through the entire book is when you realize you can be the cause, problem, and solution for everything in your life, your world changes. And at no point in the book, the heartbreaks that I talk about, even my ex or, things and challenges with work, like I never pointed the finger. The entire perspective is about, okay, here's the problem. How am I going to find a solution? Here's how I'm a part of the problem, or here how I'm not a part of the problem, but how am I going to respond to this problem? And what is going to be the solution? So every single story, every single experience, that's a motto that's like woven into the message.
That's awesome. I love that, taking responsibility for
Yeah.
what's happening to you. That's part of being the driver of your life. It's taking responsibility. Yeah, something could happen to you out of your control, but you still have the responsibility of what happens next. I love that so much. Um, so what I was going to get back to was when we were talking about the fluff and not being able to really, not even maybe you can identify it, but maybe not even be able to communicate it. I talk about this when women want to have conversations with their husbands. I took a course on the language of men. My friend Trina
Cool.
Glines teaches this course, and she puts it in such great perspectives of men are very, and it's not in a bad way, but men are just created in a way that they are instinctual, right? If they want food, they go get food. If they want sex, they want sex. If they and they cannot think of anything else until that need is met. That's just how they're wired. So when women try to communicate with men, we're usually like, "Blah, blah, 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 blah." Imagine you're having coffee with one of your best girlfriends, and you could probably, in a 20-minute conversation, talk about 50 different things, and you're following each other the whole time. You're like, uh-huh, yeah, yeah. And then you switch to something else, and then
Yes.
you switch back to the thing you were talking about, and then you're switching to what this girl at the counter's wearing, and then you switch back to the conversation you were just having. And we can follow that. Our brains can do that. We're made to multitask. That's what makes us amazing mothers, right? That's what we are instinctually good at. But with men, if you go at a man like that, they're just like, I shut down the moment you just started talking.
For sure. They didn't hear
And
anything
like,
after the first like two
it was
words.
just a
They're like,
buzzing
what?
noise. Yeah, it was just a buzzing noise. It's like when my husband starts talking about numbers and math, I'm like, I'm out. Done.
So
It's like it's music starts playing in my head and his mouth's moving and I'm like, yeah.
got it.
Anyway, I tell them though, it's like you have to think about things in terms of that. You have to think about your needs and your wants in terms of that. You have to be able to explain it in a way that your 5-year-old can understand it. So you have to be able to know what you want, write it on a little 3x5 card if you have to, in a short, brief, this is what I want. That's it. You don't have to put the emotion behind it. You don't have to put the explanation behind it. You just need to sum it up quick. And I think that's a training that women need to keep in mind with everything, with themselves, even, especially with journaling, when people get so daunted feeling like, I know a lot of the women in my community, because we do journaling, and when they first do it, a lot of them have this like, well, if it's not perfect, or if it doesn't look like an outline that we were taught in English class, or if it doesn't look like I'm the author of this book. No. Spew out words, expletives, like
Yeah.
scribbles. I mean, it's just get it out of you. That's journaling. It doesn't have to look like anything.
Yeah.
And so I think journaling is a great way to help train women how to get that across, how to get their needs known and met and communicated is start by journaling. Make your needs known to yourself first, then
For
figure out
sure.
the
And
rest.
yeah, no, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And like my whole book is like segues into journaling as such an important practice. And honestly, it was life changing for me. And really, like I always say, kind of exactly how you said, a lot of people think that you have to be a good writer or they have to do it this way. And I'm like, there's no structure. Like that's what's beautiful about it. And I always say, like, just be vulnerable with the pages because people are like, and kind of what you're saying, I bet the women that do think there has to be an outline or whatever. It's kind of just like like a task that doesn't really help or isn't effective. The difference is until you're really truly being honest and writing down the things that, quite frankly, you probably don't want to. You don't even really want to admit it to yourself. But until you get that on paper and you get that out and you just like pretty much purge it, you're not going to start processing it, right? And I write about that even in my book about how I used to think that I could just outrun my thoughts. And it's like I've always been an athlete my whole life. I could pretty much swim when I could walk. So it was always that athlete mentality, like suck it up, rub some dirt on it, just push it aside.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to real like emotional traumas, and we all have them, it starts to cause dysfunction in our lives. And until we can process it, then there's we're just stuck in that warp. And that's where I start, like, I talk about that experience, that story of like, I used to think journaling was so dumb. Like, I truly did. I was like, there's no way me, when I started journaling, I was 25. My sister was really adamant about me doing it. I was like, Taylor, there is no way a, long overdue diary is going to help me. And she's like, just do it. And I was like, okay, fine. And I finally gave in. And I was more than surprised. And I will say, journaling, if I could pinpoint one thing that actually helped me like get through things and manifest things and really truly put where I was and where I wanted to go like on paper and then like truly made it happen, was journaling.
Yeah.
That's why I have journal prompts at the end of each chapter. It's why I think it's a tool that no matter where you're at in life, whether you're, at your lowest, even at your highest, you should journal 100%.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
it's the one thing.
even finding yourself, you're in a project or you're looking to do something or whatever, and you're finding yourself stuck. You just keep hitting the same wall. It's like, create a journal prompt around it. Or the easiest journal prompt there is, which you use a few times, is what's the fear? Because it always comes back to that. There's always this something that's stopping us is always a fear. We may not, and we usually don't know what the fear is. It probably on the outside probably looks like something obvious, like people will think I'm weird or, I will fail. It's probably something pretty easy to, but really there's something underneath that. There's a thing under the thing under the thing. And if you write it down and sit with that and start writing and just kind of spiraling out into it, you will get to the thing under the thing under the thing.
Yeah.
I love that you just said that. I got to skip ahead because where did I write? Are you running or are you processing? I love when you talk about that. Are you running or are you processing? And that's one of the journal prompts I wrote down for someone in my heart. I'm watching her live in a way that seems productive. It really does. I will give you that. But when you just said it like that, I was like, oh, saying yes to everything, to try new things. That's what you want to do. You want to try new things. When you've done something and you're wanting to change something else, yes, try new things. That's the best way to figure out, no, I did not like that. Yes, I really did like that. I'm going to look into it further, right? That's the best way. Try new things. However, at what point are you running, not processing?
Yeah. And I think nowadays too, as just we are caught up in a very busy life. Like we naturally, like everything is at our fingertips. Like we're just almost like constantly overstimulated. And in a weird way, I also believe, like, I mean, just this kind of flashback and get back here, but it's like why COVID kind of a lot of people's lives changed because we were forced to slow down. We were forced to just stop. And now we're back to our normal, like, chaoticness and probably more chaotic than ever with just everything, people constantly here doing this and that, to the point where that fluff becomes normal because we don't really know what we want because we're just confused because there's so many different options. And two, it's just easier not to address it, right? And that's when we just like, I mean, I for a long time, long time was just operating on autopilot. I was functioning. No one would have known, unless you were close to me, probably. I mean, my mom started to realize things were wrong. But yeah, like I think, and unfortunately, I think a lot of people do just go through life that way. And that's why like that chapter I think is so important because I realized like I totally was functioning. I was normal, but like I wasn't addressing anything that really bothered me. I didn't realize how much dysfunction was really being caused in my life. So it really, and that's where it also coming back to the journaling, like that, it gives you that opportunity to slow down. It gives you the opportunity to be intentional. You don't have to spend hours doing it. Block out 10 minutes of your day, and I would be more than surprised if you did it for 30 days, 10 minutes max blocked out. Like it'll end up probably becoming the best 10 minutes of your day because it's different than anything at this point in our lives we have access to. It's an opportunity to practice gratitude. It's an opportunity for your own safe space where no one can bother you. So yeah, I mean, like I realized too with journaling and, even if I'm not trying to outrun my thoughts or not process them, if I start avoiding journaling, I know that there's something that I'm
that
avoiding
you don't
that
want
I
to
don't
dig
want
into.
to address. Yes. And I don't let it go on too long anymore because I'm like, all right, Kayla, like,
it's like the
we know something's there.
Notebook
Let's
sitting
just
on
do
the
it.
table that you walk by every time and you just kind of look at it like
Even now, it happens. And I'm just like, oh, just do it. Just sit down, start writing. I know you don't want to. This is going to be an ugly one, but it's okay. It'll be better after this.
Just picture it. That would be
No,
me. Like, you're just, like, glaring at it like, "I see you.
yeah,
Stop talking to me," you know? Like, it could get
literally.
weird. It could get weird.
Oh, it gets weird. Don't get me
Oh
wrong.
my
Like
gosh.
I'm totally, totally that person. I'm like, okay, just do it. It's
Okay.
fine.
Um, what made you want to become I don't know how to ask this, share this in a way to help others grow? Like, what made this be more than just you doing it for yourself, that you had this vision to help others that do this?
You know, it's funny. It's like I just knew I had a story to share. It's kind of those things where you can't like really pinpoint it. Like I remember like going into writing this book and everyone's like, well, why are you writing a book? And I'm like, because I just want to write a book. Like I have a story to share, you know? A lot of people, like even in the workshop, they had a business that they were trying to promote or they wanted to like build their brand credibility. Like I didn't know any of that until I started writing the book. Like I was just like, I have a story I want to share, right? So I went into it very
Right.
naive. And so I think that's where like the authentic message really came from and throughout the entire book. Um, so I guess, like, in terms of I did one thing I didn't realize how much it would be a healing journey for myself, though. Like, I didn't realize even, like, my intention was to help other people through my story when I first started writing it. Like, I know I have a story to share. I know I've overcome a lot, and I know it can be helpful for somebody because if I had this book that I want to write when I was going through all of my stuff, this would have been the book that helped me get past that point, right? And that's how I wrote it, almost to the old version of myself. It was like, this is and I know I'm not the only person that's felt that way. Like, I know there's
Right.
multiple people that feel kinda stuck or suffocated or living in a life that they don't feel is authentic to them because they feel like they have to. And those are the people, when I had that in mind, I was like, this is the book that I would have wanted when I felt stuck and at my lowest, and how do I take those steps to start making moves for myself? But I didn't realize how healing it was. Like, I always say, I was like, that was the hardest, most, like, draining thing ever, just, like it was like purging, right? I was, like, getting
Right.
everything out, but I didn't realize how much I didn't know about myself until I started writing this book, and it was probably the most fast-track healing process ever. It really is such an interesting journey, and everyone has different writing experiences. At this point, people are like, "Oh, it can be easy to write a book." I'm like, "Not a good book. It's not easy to write a good book, I can tell you that." But, yeah, it was definitely hard, very hard, and at the end of the book, I mean, I'm not gonna give anything away by saying this, but, like, I make a note, I was like, I didn't realize how much I was writing this book to myself as I was sharing it for other people. Um, but I guess hopefully that helps answer it. The question, because
It's
I think
actually I feel like it's the most genuine, not gross. Like, you didn't have an ulterior motive, you know what I mean? When you wanna
no.
help people because it helped yourself, it's like having so when I was a first-time mom, I mean, the internet and things like that, like Yelp and all the things, that wasn't a thing, right? When I was a first-time mom, it was like the dark ages, basically. But I remember getting something and it came and it was a big piece of crap, like this high chair. It was a big piece of crap and I had to put it together and then it was a big piece of crap put together. And I'm like, I'd never even put a child in this thing. Then I had to take the stupid thing apart and I was like, son of a, why did nobody tell me about this? And then I found some other thing that actually had some reviews on it from women. It must have been on an app or something I was in. But anyway, it had some reviews and I got it and I'm like, life changing. And that is actually where my Instagram, Pure Imperfection, was born, was because it started as a truthful place. I'm like, I'm gonna review stuff and I'm gonna be honest about it. I'm not gonna be influenced by brands. Like maybe they don't want to send me their stuff because they're scared that I'll say it's a piece of crap. But I'm gonna be the
Mhm.
one that I'm not scared to say it's a piece of crap. I'll tell you. I'm not here being influenced. Like now influencing is a thing. It's like
Yeah,
people trust the people they see on Instagram more than anything. It used to be commercials, but now all these brands put their money into influencers because they're more respected, I guess, or more trusted than just
right.
Reese Witherspoon saying it or a celebrity, right? It's these people that are have become, like I said at the beginning of this, I've been following them in their stories and I know them. We're best friends, even though they wouldn't know me, on the street. But anyway, it's so when you were writing this to yourself, and it's kind of why I started my women's community as well, is I'm doing the work alongside them. I'm not an expert in this. I'm not saying I know and have all the answers. I'm doing the work with you and we're going to do it together. So yeah, now I've been doing it longer than most of the women that come in. Obviously, I've been doing it longer, but that's anything in life. Someone has always been doing it longer. But I think
Right.
so that's why it's actually beautiful, because you're sharing it as a pure thing, not a gross thing. You're not doing it with an ulterior motive.
Yeah, and I mean, even like it's been so interesting because, like I said, going into it, like it was just writing the book, and now it's like, but it's been hard kind of to transition because like after writing the book and like my plans were only to help other people. And that turned into the nonprofit that I now have, which is called Move Into Words. And it's all about cultivating a community for young professionals to thrive. And we focused really on prioritizing sustainable mental and physical health habits. And journaling is a practical tool that we heavily advocate for. So we do really we've done mostly quarterly events, and it's really just brings like a really strong community around the Charlotte area, which is where I'm located currently. We want to expand significantly. The events are awesome, but to me, we're just missing connectivity, right? And this entire book, like if you're reading it, like you feel like you know me, kind of as you said.
Mhm.
Like it's not, it's it's not sugarcoated. So yeah, I mean, I guess for me, it's been like kind of weird transitioning into like, okay, now the coaching and stuff like that. Cause like I don't want to like even make people pay me to help them, And like I have a lot of
It's
people that like
hard,
I'm now,
huh? It is, it's
yeah, like I have a
hard.
ton of people I'm helping, like even like one on one coaching. And I'm like, I don't want you to pay me for this because I just want to help
Yeah.
you, But I'm like, also my time. And like, again, I
Yeah.
am a businesswoman, true and true. Like I work in real estate, I'm an entrepreneur, I have other stuff going on, that investments that I'm building. So it's like my time is worth money, but like I don't want you to pay me for this at the same time. So
Yeah.
it's been such a weird kind of thing. I'm like, how do I combine the things that I'm really passionate about that I can help on a larger scale to where it really truly is worth my time, to where I can continue to compound it and reach more people. So I've been like kind of back to the whiteboard of like figuring all that out at the same time. But yeah.
I'm glad you actually segued right into moving towards, because I was going to ask you about that. So tell me a little bit about it. Like, what do you have events? What does an event look like for that?
Yeah, so our first event was actually the beginning of this year, and the first one we did, we focus on, the mental and physical side. So we do, and the reason it's called Move Into Words is because obviously movement generates a body flow, and then like
Yeah.
we talk about journaling, and then of course like the speaking part of it. The first event we brought a certified yoga instructor. We went to this really like great, it's actually like an outdoor brewery. It's just like more for the space purposes. We had like 60 people there for the first event, which was really cool. So we did a yoga flow for 45 minutes. Then we talked about the practice of journaling. We provide the tools, we provide the prompts, we provide kind of like an overview of what it is. So we give everybody a journal, kind of do that for about 20 minutes, and really more like 15, because we're not like, hey, right. And then like, let's talk about it. It's just really like, hey, make this a practice and like use
Yeah.
our tools to help you do it. And then we bring a motivational speaker. So that one was more kind of about like self awareness, self engagement. And then the next one we did was called Knocking Out Anxiety, is what we kind of marketed it as. So we did a boxing hit workout, and then we had another professional speaker come talk about practical ways to overcome anxiety. So it's kind of a collaboration of obviously moving your body, but then getting really intentional and thoughtful with, practical things that do affect mental health, especially kind of in that young professional range, and building confidence, and also creating a supportive community. That's like the main thing. Like I said, connectivity, I think, is something, especially with the access of connectivity at our fingertips to a certain extent, just not the same. It's not the
Yeah.
same. It's being in person, being able to have that human interaction. Like I always say, like I mix old school values with like new technology. So I'm very efficient at communicating, over Zoom or video calls, also text messages, emails. But man, like if you meet me, first couple minutes, you're going to love me. Strong eye contact, big smile, firm handshake, and I'll chat your ear off, but also I want to hear about you. So that's kind of where that community part of it to me is like the biggest thing. It's like building that community and fostering that community of young professionals that are growth mindseted and just truly want better for themselves, and giving them the tools to do it.
I love it so much. It sounds incredible. I'd like make the trip just for it to come do that. That sounds awesome.
Where are
I
you located? I was
I'm
actually
in
gonna ask you that.
St. George, Utah.
Oh, come to North Carolina. We'd have so much
I
fun.
know. I would love
We'll
Charlotte.
expand to Utah too.
I have so many people in Charlotte that I would love to come see. Sally Holder was my business coach, and there's a shop there too. Is it Tiny Tassels? Tiny Tassels. I have
Oh,
earrings and
yeah.
great stuff from there. Yeah, I love it. So it is on my list to definitely come. So that's what I mean. It would just be a reason for me to come that there's already reasons. So I would love to do something like that. I cannot say more amazing things about in-person events. I can't.
Yeah.
I was never part of them. My husband was never part of them. He is a very successful entrepreneur. He's built multiple companies, whatever, but he finally when we both got into this space, it was because of the men's community. My community is the women's community. He asked me to create the women's community. And so he and my husband are friends, but my husband never took part in what he was doing in this men's community. Well, so when we all got involved in that, my husband became part of that and started to go on these in-person hunts and events. And he was like, before this moment, so like here I am growing this women's community, right? And I'm talking to him as an entrepreneur, businessman, trying to be like, well, this is a problem. How do I get past this? Or this is this, whatever, And he's like, if you would have come to me before we knew this existed, these kinds of communities, I would have said, you're not paying for a membership to make friends and read books. Go to the library, join a mommy and me group. Like what, you know what I mean? He's like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have seen the value in a community like this. But he's like, but now I know it. I see you doing it and you can explain it to me. I see the value. It is incredible. And now take that value and multiply that by 100. That's an in-person event. There's something about connecting. COVID taught us this, that we are meant to be in villages. We are meant to not be doing this alone. There's no lone wolfing. We are meant to thrive with other people and have these it's a passing of energy that you cannot get through Zoom. It's like,
Yeah.
what is it when you have a sugar supplement, It's like sugar versus a sugar supplement.
Yeah,
Or it's
it's
like
not
tofu versus meat, It's like it
Yeah.
will sustain you, but it's not gonna.
It's there, but it's not the same
Yeah,
thing,
it's
right?
not the
Like,
same thing.
yeah. No, it's so true. And I mean, like even like the in-person events that we've done, like we've only done 2. We have a handful of like the summer's tough, honestly, like trying to plan stuff and then people like just
Woof,
traveling.
amen.
So yeah. So it's kind of those things where it's like, and I mean, gosh, we've been so busy, like with my book launch and then the party and then like even just real estate. It was kind of those things where like we've been mostly kind of not like refocusing, but kind of refocusing and like wanting to really expand, right? Because the concept's there, our ideas there, the foundation of the mission is there, and it's now just kind of getting the right backing. And so we've been really bringing it, not again back to the whiteboard, but more of like restructuring it, kind of like again going from point A to point B, like this is what we want, this is how we need to get there, and kind of directly asking for those correct sponsorships with the right partners.
Yeah.
So that's what we've been really kind of refocusing on going into the fall. We're going to reach out to some colleges. We're going to have some conversations with some big people that we've been really kind of networking with over the past couple of months. We have a couple events that we're going to plan in kind of collaboration, but also just individually through the fall and winter. And then, going into the winter, there's always galas and stuff like that. So we have some big plans for it. But at the end of the day, like that is the one thing too that we will drive home with, sponsors is like, where we're missing, even with like, I'm not a licensed therapist. I'm not sitting here telling you like deep mental health things, but I can tell you that moving your body makes your mental health better. I can tell
Yeah.
you that being around good people makes your health better. I can tell you good habits makes you feel better. I can tell you the environment you surround yourself with makes you feel better. So these are things that like what our mission is to be able to bring those types of groups of people and feel supportive. I'm 29, I turned 30 this year. And the biggest thing is like, if you want to meet new friends at this age, like there's not too much there besides going to a bar or going here. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to I don't go out on the weekends. I'm focusing on building businesses and stuff like that. Like I don't do that. So of course there's a lot of people that want to be that way, but they don't have the access to it. So we want to bridge that gap and really be the well-known bridge of that gap. Where it's not intimidating. It's not like you have to be at a status. It's like, hey, if you want to grow, come here. We're going to hold your hand. So that's kind of, I guess, where we're at with the moving towards and stuff like that too.
I love it. I'm on board. I'm going to follow along and I'm going to get involved somehow because I love it.
Yes. No, would absolutely love that.
I want to ask you talk to me about there's a place where you have this realization where, and I it's so beautifully worded in your book, but how it affected me was because my messaging is changing in here. And it's not changing. It's actually the same messaging. It's just saying it a different way. It's kind of, you've been saying it this whole time. You've been saying it in your book. It's your messaging as well, is you can have a good life. You can have a good life. You always maybe think, I have a good life. And that's equal to functioning. Good life equals functioning. And it's kind of like riding on a stay still bike, right? You're not going anywhere. You're functioning. You're healthy. You're active. You're in a good marriage. You have a good job. You have cute kids, whatever. You go on a vacation. That's functioning. That's a good life. However, there is always room for having an exceptional life, which is equal to intentionality. Intentionality is the difference. Intentionality gets you on a road bike and now you're going somewhere. You have direction. So I've always had a good life. And it wasn't until I found intentionality and purpose that I created an extraordinary life. It has nothing to do with the fact that we've traveled the world and been to 60 countries. I mean, I think when you define it that way, people look at it that way and they're like, oh, it's because they're doing this. And it's like, no. It's because I started goal setting. It's because I started journaling. It's because I started keeping a planner and a to-do list, and I cross off my to-do list. It keeps me going forward rather than around and around and around doing the same thing. So the way you talk about the realization that I'm fine seems like an okay place to be. But most of the time it's because you're comparing it with someone else's not fine. I love it because you're talking about, you guys, you're going to have to read the book to maybe get more into this, but we're going to talk about this because trauma is trauma. I have my trauma, you have your trauma. Yes, there's definitely different levels of trauma. And I feel like in a good life, I'm fine because I know what real trauma looks like. I know what the bad looks like, and I'm not going through that. So of course I'm fine. Right. But that's just not allowing for my own trauma, whatever that is. They may be insignificant in comparison to a big trauma, but they're still my trauma, so they are significant to me. So what was it, or how can we help explain to these listeners that how to identify if that's something you're stopping yourself in? You're just stopping yourself at, I'm fine.
Well, and that's kind of like, because naturally we do just want to compare ourselves in terms of scales. Exactly. Right. Like, and there are, I even write it in the book, there's traumas that like, I'm never going to understand the extremity of. Like, I'm just not. Right. But if I focus on not being able to understand that, I'm not going to understand my own. And that's really like kind of the whole messaging. And, this is like one thing, and it's controversial, but it's also honestly very true. And probably what switched me from constantly serving others to actually taking a step back and reevaluating what trauma was and what I needed for myself is I started being selfish, and not in a way at compromising other people or putting them in a bad space. Like that's not what I mean by being selfish. I just truly started making time for myself, saying no when I wanted to say no, saying yes when I should have said yes, rather than doing things to serve others. And I do truly believe being selfish is the most selfless thing you can do. So you have to be selfish before you can truly be selfless, because I can tell you the way I'm helping people now, I wouldn't have been able to help them in 2020. Like if I didn't take that step and make the change for myself, I wouldn't be helping anybody, because I would be stuck in that same position, serving other people and not living with purpose, right? And kind of, as you said, like you do all these things and you have like when you have purpose, things come and opportunities and doors open that like is undescribable. And like I was actually talking about this on another podcast at one point, and he was talking about like success formula, and he was saying it's discipline plus consistency plus persistence. And he's like, I mean, obviously, with your success and people that are successful, you're kind of naturally disciplined, you're naturally kind of consistent, like you just have to be, you just show up, it's embodied in you. But persistence, like how do you stay persistent? And to me, persistence is a purpose served greater than yourself, something that brings you more purpose than you, something that when you wake up and you don't feel like being there, you don't feel like doing it, you still do. And that's
Right.
what causes the consistency and the discipline. But until you know what that purpose is, you are just running circles and doors don't open, opportunities aren't there. So kind of reverting back to that first step is learning to be a little bit selfish and being okay with that. Like being truly okay with being selfish and realizing it's not in a way that is hurting other people. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing because you can help other people in that way. You're going to help and serve people better when you do show up as the best version of yourself. And then that purpose evolves from there.
Yeah, it's not a gross thing. We had this
Mm-mm.
actually conversation last night in our call was because we were touching on boundaries. It's really funny how I put things
Ooh.
together. But our monthly topic this month, because I've been basically on death's door for the last 2 months, is how we take our bodies and minds for granted when they're fully at their healthiest, like when they're at their prime, right? When we're functioning just like we should be and we're working out, whatever. Are we working out? Or are we pushing ourselves hard enough? Are we reading books? Are we um, using our creation? Are we whatever, right? Not really, usually, because usually we're still just functioning and good. We're functioning. We're good. And so we take for that for granted. And when you really recognize that is when shit hits the fan or you're down and out and you're like, oh, I would give anything to not feel this way. I would give anything to you realize what you take for granted when you're sick. And so that got into boundaries, setting boundaries. And I kind of put that in this like, listen, when you're sick, how many yeses do you give away? Like, not many, because you don't have many to give. Yeses have to remain close to your heart. But when you're not sick, yeses are like parade candy. You're just throwing them out, throwing them out, throwing them out to your detriment, really. So thinking about that in terms of being selfish as being critical is not saying no to people is not mean if you're doing it in a way that's not gross. Like if you intentionally want to hurt somebody and so you say no, that's mean, that's gross. That's a toxic boundary. That's not a good way of setting a boundary and being selfish in a good way. I
Right.
hate using
No,
the
and
word selfish because
I
it's
know.
such a negative thing, but it's not. Selfless, anyway. But if you are doing it, and I compare it to like bragging, like women notoriously won't brag about themselves. Men will brag about themselves all the time. And you can tell when it's gross bragging or when it's just someone that's really proud of themselves. But men
Mhm.
do it all the time. It's like not even a big deal. But when women do it, they just don't. They don't.
Yeah.
It's either
Yeah.
these women who are just super confident and proud. You can tell when it's gross. So I'm trying to teach to like give permission to brag about yourself. You're proud of yourself. You're accomplishing things. Be proud of that. That's not gross. If you're doing
Mhm.
it a way to hurt someone, it's gross. Same as if you're doing selfish things because it's in spite of someone else or, that's gross. That's selfish.
For sure. And
But
I
when
think
you're
it's so
doing it in a way to love yourself and better yourself, that's amazing.
yeah, no, I mean, sorry, I mean, almost cut you off there.
No, you're good.
But I think the one word that you said that like really kind of brings all of those points together is intentional. Like it's your true intentions, right? Like if you're doing it in a way that is trying to hurt somebody, then yeah, you're in the wrong. But if you're doing it in a way that's intentional to better yourself, because if you better yourself, you're going to be better for other people, right?
Right.
That's truly how it works. Then no, even like the words envy and jealousy, like I think envy is an important word. I think it's important to envy people because that's motivation, that's determination, that gives you something to look up to. You're jealous, that's toxic, right? So there's kind of ways to take words that we technically think is bad and use them that in a way that necessarily isn't. It's, I mean, of course, like the dictionary is the dictionary and that's like how we work them. But again, it's the intention. It's the intention behind what they mean, right? We can all have our own different versions. We say words differently. We all act differently. So really, it's just, unless we create our own word for it, selfish is really the definition of like what that is. Same thing with like envy.
Yeah, thinking of yourself first.
Yeah,
that's
for
probably
sure.
the definition, right? And that's not a bad thing. We just have to change the narrative behind the definition. It's not a bad thing.
100%.
I'm with you. All right. So how can our listeners today leverage their own stories and experiences to inspire others and create meaningful connections within their own communities? Like you used your story.
Yeah. Write a book. I'm kidding. No. I'd say everybody's different, right? Like for me, like I love writing. It's an outlet that I know I could pour my heart and soul into that could be impactful and helpful. So I really think it's like tapping into your creative side. And some people like to make videos, some people don't. Some people like to help at, charities and meet new people. So it's really kind of tapping into kind of, again, getting past the fluff and being like, how can I help? How do I want to help? What do I have to offer that I know can help? And naturally, I think I've kind of overcome the idea of imposter syndrome. I don't really think it's real anymore. I think it's just something that we put into our mind. Like we all have something to offer. Like we are all experts in our own experience.
For sure.
And we can find a lot of confidence in that. So if we're willing, we all have something we can share and help people with. And we all can learn something from people if we're willing to listen. So I think it's really just getting intentional with like, what does make you passionate? Like, what are you good at? How can you bring that? And then find the outlets. I mean, gosh, we've got social media, we've got blogs, we've got TV, you've got YouTube, you've got so many opportunities to put your message out there. And then just start doing it because with the intention of authentically wanting to help, doors, opportunities open. I mean, I'm not just saying just go in there and, be irrational and wing it, right? Like have a plan, have goals in mind, but at the same time, like give it a go. It'll probably change 1,000 times in terms of what your intention in terms of how to get there or how to get there really, evolves. But until you start sharing your message, no one's going to know what it is. So find the best way, kind of identify the outlet, identify what the message is, and then find the best way to get it out there that is most authentic to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Just do something.
Just do it.
Something.
Just do it.
Just
I always say that. It's so cliche, but seriously.
Just do one thing. Just do something that's different than what you normally do and see what happens. I've decided, well, I've not decided. Fear's never bothered me. I've always seen fear more as adventure. I've always that's my definition of it. We did a whole month on fear and it was a really cool book that went with it. But anyway, for me, I naturally just look at it as adventure. But I was reading a book or listening to a podcast, something the other day, and it was start defining fear or looking at fear as curiosity. Like, why is this scaring me or what do I fear from this and why? Like just being curious about it will help you break that down and allow you to maybe get one step further. But just do one thing differently. I swear. Like, let's talk about radical action. Like, just do one thing differently. It doesn't have to move a mountain. Everybody feels like you have to move a mountain. I just folded a pile of laundry. I've had a basket of laundry sitting on my floor that I keep just adding laundry onto the top of it.
Oh, I do that too.
So I'm folding the laundry off the top of it, but the basket is still full of this laundry. And I just folded it yesterday. And I'm like, that's what it's about today, ladies. It's not always moving mountains. Sometimes it's just picking up picking up pebbles. It's like, that was all I needed to do.
And that's a really good point because for me, I think that was I had the hardest time learning to kind of give myself grace in that sense, like, and give myself credit. Like, okay, you've accomplished a lot. Like, it's okay to calm down a little bit, take a step back. You don't have to move mountains every day, Kayla. Like you can You can have days where you don't feel like moving anything. Okay. Like it's okay. It really is okay. And like I started, I think it's from the gap and the gain. And it was a practice that really helped because giving myself credit, I would say is probably the hardest thing that I've had to learn to do, to not just be constantly like, what's next, what's next, what's next, rather than being like, okay, no, give yourself a little pat on the back. Right. And each day now I write down what were 3 wins for the day and what are 3 wins for tomorrow.
Yeah.
So it's constantly, and that was a practice that they put in that, it's actually a great audiobook. Like I love it. It's conversational. They read it and then they have a conversation at the end. But I was like, dang. And for me, that was like pretty life changing. So yeah, I completely agree. And I think when you just get started, you just have to know you're only going to be moving pebbles. And then those pebbles, then you find stones. And as long as you keep doing it, you're going to beat 90% of the people, because that's where people fall off, is the consistency. And naturally, we're kind of wired to think that it's just overnight success, right? I call it the microwave society. You heat it up and boom, 30 seconds, it's there.
Oh my
It's
gosh,
ready to go.
right.
And that's not real. That's just not real. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Everyone thinks it needs to be. Everyone thinks it needs to be. I really appreciate, and I say this to the women in my community that are younger than me, is because they're figuring these things out. They're figuring out these tools. It's such an earlier place in their lives, like youth deciding slowing down is like, if I would have figured that out, I mean, we can all say that. Everybody can say that that's older. If I would have figured that out, I used to walk to school in the snow. Oh, I'm not that old. But I did finally, like we started traveling full-time internationally in 2017. And at that time, I thought I had beat my demons. And this is something I maybe need to talk about more is we were living in a certain way, good life, functional, right? We were doing all the things. In anybody's definition was a great, amazing life. Well, then the recession hit. We lost everything. We had to redefine what success was to us. We had to redefine what a great life was to us, what an exceptional life was to us. So then 6 years later, we left the country with our 2 little boys and we're gone, traveled the world for the next 7 years. And it's like, so at that point when we left, we thought that we had defined and figured out what that was going to look like for us. And we'd made it, like, yay, I have done all the growth I need to do, right? I love that. I love that concept. I'm done growing. I figured it out. It's like,
No.
okay,
No.
you're an idiot.
No.
So then we leave, and it was like you're saying, it was like, oh, we have to see the Eiffel Tower. Now we have to get to Normandy. Now we have to see Bellawood. We may never get back here, so we have to go clear out to Brest and see Oceanopolis, and we have to go to where this tapestry is. You know what I mean? Like we're trying to see all of these things so fast, and so we're kind of missing the point of it. And I had to learn as that was happening, these little life lessons, like I'd gotten over the keeping up with Joneses, but now I was in this new season of keeping up with the Joneses, but it was for travel families. And it was like, oh, wait a minute. Whoa, I got to get over this. Well, now, so last year, here we are. I'd been doing my community for a year and a half. And my husband says, Kay, we're way past where I said I would give you to build this community and this company. We got to go. Let's go travel again. And here I was at this trajectory of my business. I had a business coach. We were planning all these things. And I'm like, on our last call, I'm like, so I'm just leaving the country for like the next year or two. So thanks for your help, but like I'm out.
Yeah.
And I had to, again, here I was, I'm so expanded. I've done the growth. And here I am again, hit with something that I'm like, wait a minute, what is this going to look like? I'm going to shut things down? No. Maybe I'm not going to record podcasts. Fine. I'm not going to do these other things we've been planning to do in business. Great. And it was at that moment that the word ease hit me. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been trying to do, but it's never really like just connected in that most perfect way. Was who gives a crap about anything else And not in a mean way, but in a way that, like, I know what my values are and what's important to me, and that's my family and making memories with my family and being able to travel with my family and appreciating that that's what's happening when it's happening.
Yeah.
Who gives a crap about the rest? So for you to be realizing that slowing down, giving yourself grace, giving yourself the time to figure these things out in your own way and processing through it, it just makes me be like, wow, the narrative is changing. I am so proud to be part of something that is changing that narrative for the next generation because my mom didn't have
Yeah.
that luxury.
Yeah, no, it's so true. I mean, and that honestly is such a beautiful story, and it really is, like, it's interesting because I'm a fast-paced person. Like, I mean, I talk fast, clearly. Like, I am on the go. My mind, like, I think of new ideas every 5 minutes. Like, it's always something coming up, but I've gained probably more clarity over the past 6 months than I have in a long time in terms of, like, what do I really want? Where do I really wanna be? And I mean, I would say writing the book helped me a lot with that. Like, I already knew what the message was that I wanted to share, but it's like, this is where I want to be. And again, removing all the fluff. This is where I want to be, and this is how I wanna get there. And I wanna be doing it in a way that is authentic to me, in a way that I enjoy. Yeah, it's gonna require risk. Yeah, it's gonna require a lot of hard work, but this is something that I wanna do, and it's gonna allow me to have freedom when I want to, right? It's gonna allow me to be able to spend time with the people that I love when I want to. It's gonna allow me to travel when I want to. Um, and that's, like, where and I mean, it's interesting because being 29, like, and that's where, like, even moving to where trying to cultivate that type of community, but having these ideas and these dreams, and not just dreams, but, like, they're happening. Like, I don't just randomly put this out in the world and just be like, "Ah, it's gonna happen." Like, I do it, you know? Um, finding people that are really in that same like mind, it's tough. It
Yeah.
really is tough. They're like, "You're crazy." That's like, a lot of people live, like, almost over 90% of the people, I would say, live in their fear. And that's all it is. Like, they're just settling because they're scared to make one different move. Like you said, do one thing. Like,
Yeah.
success or, like, changing your life is one decision away, truly. Like, it's as simple as that. And you know it, you can feel it, but you choose the latter, and because it's more comfortable. It's easier.
Yeah.
We're gonna require sacrifice. Um, so yeah,
That makes me
I get
think
it.
of, Emily Frizella. When I had her on here, she said something that I think it was her dad always said to her was, with people, when you're collecting people, right, in your life and looking around at which you talk about relationships in your book as well, but look around in your life and look at the people who are affecting you, because they're all affecting you. I mean, think about when we were teenagers, like, our family had nothing to do with anything. It was all our
Right.
friends, right? So he says to her, and she said to me, "I would rather have 4 quarters than 100 pennies." I would rather, so looking for those people that are absolutely gonna inspire you to move the needle, inspire you to do the things is gonna be the biggest influence in your life that you may not even recognize. And so while you're sitting here putting into all of these other people, these pennies, wasting time and energy on, I'm not saying wasting in a mean way, like, they could be amazing people. They could be such
Mhm.
loving, dear people, great. But if you are wasting room and space on those relationships, what what who are you missing out on? So that
For
that
sure.
sounded a little gross a little bit. But anyway,
No,
4 quarters
no.
rather than 100 pennies. I'm like, "Get
Yeah.
out of
I
my
mean,
life.
it's
You don't
it's
make the
true, like,
cut."
unfortunately, no, it's not even like that. It's just, it's like people's intentions change. People's, they
Yeah,
just like
and where you are in
you
life, it changes.
yeah. Yeah, like, some people grow different directions, and it's not like you're not like, "Oh my gosh, you suck, bye," It's just like you go different ways. And so, yeah, like, you start throwing pennies in the fountain, making
Yeah,
wishes, like, I wish nothing bad upon you." Our relationship is probably not fruitful at this point anymore, right?
right. It's
And
not for
it
me.
makes a yeah, like, and that's in the book, like, I write, like, know your starting lineup. So it's, I talk about, like, your starting lineup being the people that are, like, love you unconditionally. It's your family, it's your really, like, close friends, stuff like that. And then on your team being the people that, are supportive of you. They're not as close to you, but they're people you wanna be around. They're, like, people in your circle. And then your cut are the people that, like shouldn't be there. Like, they shouldn't be there, or maybe you don't know they shouldn't be there, but they're the toxic ones. They're the people that are holding you back. And then I referenced you're the coach. So it's, having enough respect for yourself and love for yourself to surround yourself with the people that bring you up. So you can make the decisions of who's on your team, who's in your starting lineup, and who you need to cut, what pennies you need to throw into the fountain.
Right.
So yeah.
For sure. All right. Well, hey, this has been too good, but I have one last question for you. Too good. Too good, but we could go on forever. I have a feeling you and I could just keep going.
Yeah. We could go for like 4 hours.
Yeah, we got time. It's fine. The kids are fine. Just keep going. No. Okay. What empowering message or lesson from your book do you hope resonates the most with readers and motivates them to take action in their own lives?
There's a handful of like nuggets in there. Like if you look at the lemon drops and, at the end of each chapter, the lemon drops are key takeaways. But it really does kind of come back to taking the radical responsibility for your life. And that's why it kind of summarizes the whole book. But even as I said earlier, it's when you realize you can be the cause, problem, and solution for everything in your life, and you really adopt that mindset, your world does change. And you really can find confidence in that, because when you realize you can be the cause, you take the responsibility, right? You own it.
Yeah.
And even if you're not the cause, right, you still have a response. You're responsible for that response. And when you start showing up kind of in that way, like fear does kind of go away. Like it's not like it doesn't exist, right? Like I still fear things. And kind of as you say, I think about it, I'm like, what is this? Like, what is holding me back? But when you fear something, it just means you care a lot, right? It's not a bad thing. But naturally, as you start to kind of just overcome those fears and you take that responsibility, realize that no matter what, you can figure it out. Like you'll be fine. You really do just start to live in a way that what people think or anything like that doesn't affect you. It's truly checking your own boxes, and living a life that is authentic to you. But until you can take the responsibility to do so, you're never going to start checking your own boxes. You're going to be living a life for other people. And that is the last thing I want people doing, is feeling stuck in a life they can't get out of, because you're never stuck. You're keeping yourself there. So
I love it. That was beautiful. Couldn't have said it better myself. Clip it.
Love it.
Put it to the top. I love it. Thank you so
listen to this.
much. I know. If you get anything from this, I'm just going to have that be the clip. If you get anything from this, here it is. Just sum it up. The rest of it's just a good time. Get a glass of wine and listen, but this is it. Well, Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and it was really fun getting to know you. And I'm actually really, really interested in looking more into moving towards. So I'm going to reach out to you about that, and we'll talk more about that. But thank you so much. And you guys, listeners, hey, I've been listening to this book. Remember, always Squeezing Lemons. I've been listening to it on Audible and Amazon, of course, and Spotify. So go check it out. And is there anywhere else that you would like people to come find you? We'll drop them in the show notes.
I'm on multiple social media platforms, everything like that. But if you just go to my website, kaylalogue.com, you can find all my social media links. You can buy my book there. You can see my speaking stuff. There's podcast stuff. There's everything kind of on my website. But yeah, Instagram's kind of the main platform I use. So it's Kayla Logue _. But my website hosts all the info. So would love to hear from
one
everybody.
place, one-stop shop. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for having me.